Welcome to the Father on Purpose podcast, featuring author and ministry leader Kent Evans and business executive and military veteran Lawson Brown. This is a show for you, Dad. You want to be a godly and intentional father. Unfortunately, you've turned to these two knuckleheads for help. Let us know how that works out for you. Before we begin, remember this: you are not a father on accident. So go be a father on purpose. Please welcome your hosts, Kent and Lawson.
Hey, Dad, how would you like to grow in the next year? Maybe you're listening to this show at the time we're releasing it, which is January of 2025, or maybe you're hearing this in the future on some other month. Either way, think about the next 12 months of your life. How would you like to be different? How would you like to have things that you've figured out or that you've learned or new skills that you've obtained or old habits that you've completely gone away from? That's what Lawson and I want to talk about. And if you're catching it at the beginning of the year, welcome to a new year. And we hope welcome to a new you as you continue to grow in the Lord. Lawson, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, dude. How are you? Good to see you.
I have no major complaints. I have like dozens of minor complaints. If you'd like, I'll just list them all out on today's show. After the other.
Hey, this is it's on a lot of people's minds. I just want to throw this out there. I go to a gym periodically, a CrossFit gym. I don't do it religiously, but what we do on Saturdays is a partner. And so you show up and get teamed up. And there is a person there. Her name is Lynn. And I think she's in her 70s and still showing up to the gym, man. And one Saturday morning, she said, I woke up and really didn't want to be here, but I thought it's going to be 10 a.m. regardless. And I know that if I go, I'll be happy I went.
That's hilarious.
10 a.m. showing up and she didn't get out of bed and go do what she wanted to do. Same thing here. Like, what do we want to be? How deep do we want to go? How do we want to grow? And where down the line, the vision from now, what is that vision? What will fulfill that vision? And then think backwards, plan backwards.
Love that. Before we dive too deep, I want to remind our listeners of two things. One, this show is brought to you by a fantastic organization out of Laramie, Wyoming called Range Leather. Kyle and the team there make amazing products. And what's better off to a new year than to snag some new products to go with all your newfound resolutions? Go to rangeleather.com. And you can use the code MJ15 and get 15% off your next order. Maybe you need a bag or you need a portfolio or a wallet or some earrings or a new Apple Watch band. Rangeleather.com. Go there today and support our sponsor. Secondly, I would love to let you know about a resource. If you've never, ever snagged this resource from our ministry, we have what's called the Survival Gear Guide. And it's 7 traits of a godly dad. Things like trusting God, knowing scripture, building relationships. These are things we've assembled over nearly 15 years in ministry. And these are 7 characteristics we see every godly dad has in common. And you can go snag that today at manhoodjourney.org/survival-gear. We'll put the link in the show notes. That is Survival Gear, or you can search Manhood Journey Survival Gear and you'll find it. But it's an easy, free resource you can snag to help you think about 7 ways you could grow as a dad in the coming year, if you like. Michael, by the way, from Indiana, Lawson, sent us an email recently along those lines, and he said, Manhood Journey means a lot to him. The content we create has had an impact on his life, and I'll quote, and I know it's impacted so many more, including my brother, who recently came back to faith after a few years of living as an atheist. So Michael is out there leveraging our content and exposing it to his brother and other people, including his group at his church. So, Dad, if you want to be different, if you want to grow in the Lord in the next year, feel free to go snag our Survival Gear ebook to help you along the way. Now, Lawson, to bring a little bit of shape to our conversation today, I'm going to harken back. To an amazing business leader back in the day, and also a current author, speaker, leader of leaders, a guy named Michael Hyatt down in Nashville, Tennessee. I've never met Michael, but he had, for one of the coolest acronyms I've ever heard. We've heard this acronym before, KISS. And what many people think of when they hear that acronym is keep it simple, stupid, or SAM, however, whether it was the Sunday school version, they would use SAM, or whether it was the business version, they would use stupid. But he liked to use that same acronym for a different reason as it relates to thinking ahead about the new year. And so there were 4 words that go with that acronym that I'd love to unpack today on today's show to help a dad think through how he wants to be different in the coming year. So think of this acronym, Dad, KISS. And instead of keep it simple, Sam, it is in the coming year, what do you want to keep? What do you want to improve? What do you want to start? And what do you want to stop? So as you think about yourself as maybe a husband or a dad or a worker, whatever you do for a living, what are some things you want to keep doing? What are some things you want to improve at doing? What are some brand new things you need to start doing? And perhaps most importantly, what are some things that you need to stop doing? Because that often makes way for the other things. It's hard to, I'm the kind of guy who will tend to just start 10 more things without stopping anything else.
Yeah.
And all that leads to is frustration and unfulfilled, expectations and burnout. I just keep piling it on year after year. And so I do try to get more serious about that last one. So keep, improve, start, and stop. Lawson, where does your head go when we walk through that acronym?
I like it. I think it fits not only this kind of thing, but a lot of just life. You can evaluate through that KISS. And literally later today, we have a nationwide phone call with every manager, every salesperson.
Everybody in the nation? The entire nation?
The entire nation.
Hi, if you're listening, you missed the phone call. Where were you?
Right. Everybody on our team, I should say. And, it's just that time of year. We're talking about how the year went. We're looking forward, kind of thinking about how do we create the vision for our coming year. Breathe some new life into what we've been doing, take a pause and then get ready to start the coming year, at a full sprint. Why do you think, what is it about this time of year that, it's actually kind of very common to be chatting it up with someone around the holidays and a New Year's resolution type of idea, or how did your year go? What are you guys doing next year? What, that kind of conversation. Why do you think we close the calendar year as we go into the holidays? What is it about us that leads to this conversation that we're having today?
Well, I think 2 things come to mind. One is, God built rhythms into our life. Some of those are natural, like, the cycles of the moon or the sunlight coming up every day. There's like a day rhythm, there's a month rhythm. And then other things he instituted because of calendars, so like the week, the 7-day week really doesn't have a specific purpose other than God said it has a purpose. He built that rhythm, even though nothing in the physical world would remind you 7 days have gone by. But like the sunlight will remind you that 24 hours have gone by.
Right.
The year-long calendar, the 12 months, I think he built that in for the purpose of us, like the feasts of old, like the celebrations of old, like the festivals of old that he put on the Jewish calendar back in the day, in the Israelite days. There are things God wants you to do rhythmically that are good for you, that are good for me. Sabbath is a good rhythm, etc. He says his mercies are new every morning. Accepting God's grace every morning is a good rhythm. There are some rhythms that are very tight, 24 hours long. There are some rhythms that are 7 days, 30, 12 months long. But I think it goes even a little bit deeper than that, both spiritually and emotionally. And here's what I mean by that. I know God put in our hearts like different, what I would call homing beacons or desires that are pointing us to God. one of those desires is the desire to have a fresh start. It's wired into our psychology, our DNA, if you will, that we want to be able to go through this cycle of we're going to fail. We're going to be aware of that. We're going to repent. We're going to come back to the Lord. We're going to get a fresh start. This idea that we have redemption or new life or fresh start that you see in the calendar, right? So, for example, every spring, one of the things we all love about spring is you see the buds of the leaves coming out of the trees. And it's not just that. You go, oh man, I'm glad that the winter's gone, or there won't be cold weather anymore, or warm weather's coming. I think there's something deep, deep in our heart that says we are built for a fresh start. And I think we resonate with that because God put it in our hearts to resonate with it. I think our kids, our wives, everybody around us, we all have the same innate desire. And the end of a year does tend to give us that, okay, I think I can try a fresh start. And so we sometimes think of January 1 as this clean slate, even though we don't got to wait. You know, if you're listening to this on January 9th and you go, shoot, man, I got 350 more days or 45 more days to wait for the next fresh start. God will give you a fresh start every 5 minutes if you want one. But I do think at the end of a year, we just yearn for a fresh start and we take advantage of the calendar to get one.
Mm-hmm. I feel that. And I like what I don't think is healthy is New Year's resolutions. Usually people talk about the gym, you know, like here's where I'm going to start. I'm going to get better. I'm going to get better at the gym. I'm going to quit eating so-and-so. It's sometimes health related and it starts on a particular day in advance. And so from now until that day, I don't have to start yet, you know?
Right.
So,
free pass.
Yeah. All the lattes and cookies and, you know, whatever. And so it doesn't matter if you're listening to this in March of 2025.
Right.
Start when you start, like pick a lane, get behind it and commit. And I love this: keep, improve, start, and stop. Keep meaning something's working well. You want to keep doing that. It doesn't really need a whole lot of tweaking. In fact, it just kind of it's going well in your life.
Yeah. Like in my case, that's good looks. I just, you know, they're going great. I can't fix them. I really probably can't even improve them. Right. So I'm just going to keep them.
That's right. Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking about of you.
I'm sure it is.
No, like I saw that you wrote swimming and I love that you've been doing that more and more lately. You've been, you know, you put it on your calendar, you've committed to it. And that's my point is there's some commitment level going on in our lives that of all the lists of things you look at and go, that's actually one I'm going to keep. I mean, that I love that. It's going well. I like it. It's helping me, blah, blah, blah. And so keep is important.
Well, and this year was the first year, when I was a kid, when I was teenager, early 20s, well, I shouldn't say early 20s, my teenage years, when I played soccer basically almost for a living, like it's all I did, I ran all the time. You know, so from the time I was 13 till I was 18 or 19, I don't know how many miles I ran, but it's a zillion, right? I just kept running and running and running to where when I got in my 20s, I wasn't as excited about running as a means of physical exercise. So in my 40s, I started swimming at our YMCA and I would swim laps. And just this year, so I've been swimming about, 10 years or so. And just this year in 2024, the year behind us, I decided to set a goal for swimming, which I had never done. I just kind of went when I could. I tried to go 2 days a week, but it was super spotty, very hit and miss. But this year I set a goal of trying to swim 100 miles. In 1 year. And I'm currently, at the time of recording, we're recording this mid-December, I'm at exactly 96.25 miles. So I can see it, man. I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm close.
Way to go.
And it took a lot of, I told people about it. I told my wife about it, which is like, bro, if I tell April about it, A, she won't forget, and B, she will both encourage me, but also hold me accountable. Like she'll be like, no, don't come home for lunch today. Go swim. You know, like she'll keep it on my calendar for me.
In a good way, like supportive.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yep.
And so there were days when, my swim bag was packed and in my car because she helped me get it there. And so for me, that was a physical exercise goal this year that I set. And it's also, for me, it's emotional and mental because an hour with my face in the water, which is about how long it takes me to do my swim workout, is just healthy. It's good for me. And so for me, I'm not going to go try to swim 200 miles next year. I think that'd be a fool's chase. I'm going to try to get 2 years in a row.
Yeah, there you go.
I do the exact same thing.
Right.
We'll see 2026, Lord willing, if Jesus doesn't come back, what I might do in a future year. But for me, 2025 will be, if I can just do again. And for some guys, that's the idea behind this keep, is that you probably did some things right in the last year. And, the achiever success mindset might tell you to take what you did and double it or triple it or, do a lot more. And in some cases that might be appropriate. Maybe you gave 2% to your church this year and you need to give 4% or 8% or get to like a tithe of 10%. Maybe you do need to ramp it up. But for a lot of us, there are things we're doing pretty well that we just need to kick on down the road and do that again.
Right. Yeah. On the other end of that is stop. We'll get to improve
Right.
and start first, but I do agree. I think KISS, you can remember that. So it's easy to keep it in that order, but I would actually, argue that the next S is stop. And that takes a bit more discernment, what is it that I'm doing that I know is getting in my way? Of where I want to be, and people talk about once I get that habit out of my life, I can go from being 80% myself to 85%. That's going to help me get more bandwidth. And so the things that are in our way, they may not be something necessarily that's like, look, dude, if you don't stop doing that, you're going to, we're not talking necessarily about some major life changing thing. It can be what's going to get you from an 80% to an 85% to go to do more of what you think is important. You got to get something else off the plate.
Well, and I think there's two ways to look at stop. One thing you got to stop doing, or I got to stop doing, is if you have sin on the calendar, like if you have a regular habit that you just go, man, I know I shouldn't be doing this. Like there may be something super negative and dark in your life that you really need to stop. And so that would be something to put in the stop category. That could be you're grifting money on your expense report. You are looking at internet porn on a regular basis. Like there could be something very negative that is on your calendar. You go, man, I really need to stop this. And there's a whole door behind that of accountability and prayer and support groups and learning. So there may be a very dark thing that you do need to stop. So let's be real honest. That could be true for you, for me, for a lot of guys in Enlist. But for many of us, we need to stop doing something that is not necessarily evil. It's okay, but it's getting in the way of something really great or better. So for example, I have a friend named John. He lives on the West Coast, and he is one of the most intentional guys with his time that I know on planet Earth. He's about to turn 69 years old, and he's literally thinking about his 70s and how he wants to use his 70s differently than he used his 60s. And again, he could die tomorrow and Jesus could come back. Like we both know about the brevity of life, but he's thinking very intentionally. So like, for example, he's on a few boards of some organizations that all happen to time out in the next 90 days. 3 boards, and they all kind of have their end, none of which he's going to extend his stay on those boards, even though he's been invited, because he believes he's got to use his time differently in his 70s than he did in his 60s. And I'm like, wow, every time I talk to the guy, I'll just lean into learning more about his level of intentionality. So what he's doing is he's stopping some things that are not evil or wrong, but they are not the thing he feels like God's leading him to do next. So he needs to stop those and get them off his calendar. So he can do the next thing on his calendar.
Yeah. And on this same note of stop, I was with, during the Thanksgiving break, I was with someone who I hadn't seen in a long time. And this is not because the reason I haven't seen them in a long time is not because they went through drug rehab, although they did. It had just been a long time. But in that time, this guy had divorce, had lost his job, it started with pain meds and just got off track. It started innocently, and before he knew it, it turned bad. Yeah. Where he was, trying to find pain pills like downtown on the streets, actually.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying all that because it was really bad. But something that he told me to stop that was he had to completely get out of some relationships that he knew were contributing to to continuing what he did not want to continue. So in order for him to stop, he had to relationally stop having conversations and being around certain people. They were not encouraging him to continue getting better. They were still stuck. And so he talks about going, it's either every day or every other day, just some meetings where they encourage one another. And so he's surrounding himself with people who are also in that mode of stopping and staying out of it. And so it reminds me that there are also relationships in our lives that you need to look at and go, I gotta stop. I gotta pull away from that.
Man, and I would even say conversely, like you and I were trading text messages this morning, and one of the great privileges of my life is doing this show with you. And now it's being edited by my son, and Hunter still works on it. Hunter's still around doing a lot of work, promoting the show. And so like for me, the crew we have around this podcast is like one of those things where I'm like, that's in the keep category for me. That's like, if I can keep that going, because I get a ton out of talking with you. I get a ton out of working with the guys behind the scenes. For me, I look at some of these relationships. I was telling someone this past summer, Manhood Journey, our ministry, has always been cash constrained, not cash poor. I'm not saying we've been like barely making it, but we've been cash constrained, but we have been relationship rich. I mean, relationship rich. I got an email, Lawson, over the weekend from a guy in Cincinnati who was trying to figure out how to connect more relational dots for our ministry with influential people. Like that's what he was doing. Wow. Kind of on his free time, was thinking, hey, wait a minute, who have I introduced Kent to and who have I yet to introduce Kent to so that we could expand the work with fathers that we're doing both nationally and internationally. So there's guys like that, like Jim,
that's awesome,
who's sitting outside our four walls of our ministry, actively thinking of how they can bless our ministry. And it's like, unbelievable to me that I get to walk through life with these kinds of relationships. So again, as you and I are talking about some of these topics, some of it may be dark, right? There may be relationships that are negative and destructive and you really got to turn them off. And then there may be relationships that are positive and fruitful that you really just need to lean into. I need to drive back up to Cincinnati and spend some more time with Jim, right? Because he's just a great guy. And so for me, I look at a lot of these things. When we say stop doing the sinning, stop doing the average if it's getting in the way of doing the best thing. And what I'd like to do is talk about a couple Bible verses that come to mind when we talk about these topics of planning ahead and being intentional. And then I want to come back, Lawson, to what are some things that you personally and that I personally are going to keep, improve, start, and stop in the coming year, just to give a dad listening some ideas. These are not these are not your prescription, Dad. Your prescription should come straight from God and the Holy Spirit and be validated through, your prayer, your inner circle, your wife. This is not prescriptive; it's just descriptive. But let me just talk a little bit about. I love the Bible verse that you dropped into our show notes today, Proverbs 19:21. We also see this in Proverbs 16:9. Many are the plans in the mind of a man, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will stand. Often, when we think about the next year or future planning or personal improvement or whatever we're trying to do, we tend to think about it in an accidentally humanistic kind of way of thinking about it. And we think, what do I want? What do I need? What do I, and like, you know, the same words being repeated over and over again, right? I, me. And what I think we want to pivot toward, if you are a Christian, if you're a godly dad, you want to pivot toward, what does God want me to do? What is he asking me to do? What are the Ephesians 2:10 good works that he's prepared in advance for me to do? Which direction does he want me to go? Even Jesus said, John 6:38, tons of other places, he didn't come to do his own thing. He came to do what God told him to do. Jesus was a vessel, and Jesus was following the script that God was writing. He wasn't just writing his own script. And so for us as dads, if we approach our personal improvement or 1 year at a time with a very selfish or humanistic way of thinking, well, guess what? Our wives and our kids are going to pick up on that. And we're going to find out, you know, our kids are, you do you, and I can be anything I want to be, and these kind of things that sound cool and sound interesting and very empowering. However, not quite so biblical. And so what I want is, I want the purposes of the Lord to be more and more evident in my life. I want to be the guy who listens to God every minute of every day, every hour of every day of every week, and says, God, what do you want me to do? What's the next thing you want me to do? I got 100 things I could do today, and I know I'm going to have to ignore about 97 of them. So what are the 3 that you really, really do want me to do? And when I start to feel like I'm listening to him and his purposes are driving my agenda, then I feel really confident. I feel really secure. Yep. I feel really positively convicted that, like I'm going to lunch with a guy today at 11:30. And you know what? It's the right lunch for me this week. Like, I'm supposed to go to lunch with that guy. I won't be concerned at all about how I'm going to spend those 90 minutes. They're the right 90 minutes to spend. And when I'm listening to God, it just empowers me to not walk through life shakily and scarily. And that's the verse you put in our notes today.
Let me run this by you, because I have not started. I want to go through this just like, you know, the dads out there who are listening, and give some actual prayerful, thoughtful consideration to what
it's about time. I know Audrey called me and said, please, could you
Is
help
that why
my
we're
husband?
doing this show? Audrey texted, hey guy, hey, Kent.
Little
He's
help.
got to stop chasing me around the house all the time. Make him stop. So I want to go through, you know, we can talk about some of these things, yes, but I want to give this more time and attention, you know, myself too, because this is a great thought. And I've got a little bit of time right now, but I have been praying for like some themes, you know, I need something to kind of, as I go through this process, give myself a way to maybe adapt to a vision for 2025. And so my what I'm calling like a backdrop for culling the things in my life and the activities and the people. So, you know, culling in or out, or keeping or moving out, or doing something differently, I think will be against a backdrop of these things.
Okay.
I want to be, regardless of whether it's keep or improve or starting or stopping, I want to be more measured in what I do, what I accept, how I respond, how I use the resources that God has given. I want to be differently than measured. I want to be judicious. So that's a bit more, you know, measured is like amount of time, amount of money, amount of energy. Judicious is in or out. Yes or no.
Got it.
Right. That's kind of what I'm thinking this through. I want to be intentional. I want to be more intentional. This for me will go into the improve category. There are some things on my mind. Like, I want to write people notes. I want to encourage others with handwritten notes. So I'm going to I do some of that, but I don't do a great job of it. I know people who are fantastic at that. And I think it makes a difference in people's lives. I want to encourage my daughters and my wife with little notes. I want to maybe send friends just a quick card, and I want to stick it in the mail. So what am I going to need to do that? Well, I'm going to need to buy some stamps. I'm probably going to go get a little, envelope I'll probably have half the time use Manhood Journey, depending on who I'm sending it to.
There we
that
go.
Stationery that you guys sent. So measured, judicious, intentional. And then the fourth one that came to mind praying about this is grateful. Someone
Nice.
said you can't have contentment and joy won't live together. Something to that effect, right? So
What?
no, excuse me, lack of contentment and the
I was
growth
like,
of joy.
I was like, you said contentment and joy do not live together. And I'm like, where's Lawson going? He also wants to be more biblically accurate in 2025, folks. Just pay attention.
Right. And so all these things I didn't say that right, but you know what I'm saying. And so all of these things, the backdrop is Ephesians 5:15 through 16, like what you put in the show notes. It says, be careful then how you live. Be careful. I read that as measured, how you live, your behaviors, who you're with, who you interact with. It says, be careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, that is judicious and intentional, making the most of every opportunity. And so I think God's plan for our life is to follow him along these lines of how do we interact with people? How do we use the resources that he's given us for his good and to help other people? And so I want to give this a little bit more thought. There are some things in my life I want to keep doing. I've got to improve how I manage my time and our resources. We've got some things coming up in our personal lives that that I want to be more judicious about. And I feel a little run ragged right now from work and travel, and I've got to say no to things that are less important and say yes to the things that are going to get us as an organization into a better place. Yeah. And so I got to be more careful. So it kind of goes along the same lines of keep, improve, start, stop. But what I'm saying is I'm going to use those four things to say what goes into which of those, goes into which of those buckets.
Man, those are great. Like those are super. It's like a filter almost that you'll shake things through. That I think is brilliant. In fact, that verse you cited, Ephesians 5:15 and 16, what the NIV renders careful, the King James renders circumspectly. So you think about the word circumspect, it means literally like the word circumference. It means to walk around something and see it from all angles.
Cool.
So when you live a circumspect life, or you are approaching a given task in a way that is circumspect, it's like you've put it in 3D and you've looked at it from every angle and you've turned it around. And so that idea that we're going to live and walk in a way that is circumspect, man, that is really clever, dude. I love your list. And I love that filter you're going to shake some things through. I would say for me, I'm gonna bounce through this acronym, and this is not meant to tell guys, this is, again, in rewind 10 minutes, I'm not saying you should keep this same list that I've got. What I am saying is something like this process, I think, will help you as a dad, and you may come to radically different conclusions than I have come to. But like, for example, here's a couple things that I want to keep doing. I want to keep doing Bible study. I'm a good 5-day-a-weeker, maybe 6 if I'm on my game. I don't normally study on Sundays. I go to church, but I'm a 5-day-a-weeker, 4 to 5 day a weeker, and I want to keep doing that. I want to keep doing family time. I do prioritize family time. So normally I've got my issues, right? But one of them is not turning work off at 5:30 usually. So most days I get done with work 5:30, and I'm dialed into my family. I want to keep doing that. Physically, I want to keep swimming. I want to hit a year 2 where I do the exact same goal, 100 miles next year. This year, I got behind, and if you looked at my calendar, I should publish the where my pace was, because by the end of June, I was not at 50%. I was thinking in my head, I got to get halfway by the year. I was not, and so Q3 and Q4, I had to do a lot more and play some catch up. I'm gonna try to not do that. So for me, I'm going to also try to keep writing. I have some other book projects in my head that I want to start to work on so they can come out in 2026. So I want to keep writing. Those are some things I want to keep. Improve. I want to improve what I call my rhythms of review. So what I mean by that is looking at my financial investments, looking at things that I should do on a monthly or quarterly basis, where I pay attention to certain things that I need to pay attention to. Often this is in the form of manhood journey. Like, we're a digital ministry. I got to look at our podcast downloads. I got to look at our web traffic. I got to look at our email list, the things that are the digital metrics for our ministry. I might go months and not pay attention to those. I need to do a better job of that. I need to improve that. I really need to improve date nights with my wife. We do not go on enough dates. Now, we're not estranged. We have a fantastic marriage. I don't normally bump into any guys that I say I would trade marriages. That's not, I don't have a major problem, but part of that is because we've done a lot of that in the past. We have relational equity in the bank, so to speak, but I think we're drawing it down a little bit. We're drawing down some of our relational equity by not going on enough dates, man. I need to get more serious about that. And then I want to improve my book reading selections. This past year, I read a bunch of books, probably finished the year about 25 books I read. And for me, that's a very healthy pace for me. But some of them I read because they were in front of me. They weren't bad books. They weren't terrible, but I just didn't quite intentionally decide, how does Kent need to grow? Therefore, let's pour books into my head that will help me along those lines. I want to be more intentional. For me, there's one thing I wrote down about starting. I want to start sharing about Jesus more regularly with people around me. Now, part of that is, for me, I'm surrounded by a lot of Christians, which is, good and bad. It's good for me because it's reinforcing, but bad is I just don't bump into the world as often as I'd like. But I'm going to try to start sharing Jesus more frequently with people around me. That's something I've not been very bold about in the past, and I want to be more bold in that regard. Some things I want to stop. I love meeting new people. For me, it's fun. It's like doing a crossword puzzle. However, if I look back on my calendar in 2024, I met with so many new people that I need to pull that back a little bit. I need to spend more time with my wife, more time with my kids, more time with my team at Manhood Journey, more time with my board of directors, more time with guys involved in our ministry. I need to be just a bit more, to use your word, Lawson, judicious about who I agree to meet with and when and for how long. I'm going to adopt a friend of mine, Jeff. He lives in Cincinnati. His initial meeting is 25 minutes. Like when you book it on his calendar, it's a 25-minute meeting. And by minute 18 or 19, we both kind of know whether we should ever meet again. In his case, yes, we grabbed lunch. I like this guy. He seems to like me well enough. So we have a great relationship developing. But for a lot of guys, man, I need to be a little more judicious with my time in what I do. So I'm going to stop saying, sure, I'll meet with you. No, I'm going to think a little bit about that. In my case, there may be someone else at Manhood Journey that would be a better place for you to start. So for example, if you want to talk with us about being an author on our blog, yeah, that's a great conversation. And we really want to have that with you, but I'm the wrong guy to have that conversation initially. So I'm going to start bouncing people to our team. And then the other thing I want to stop, and I'm only saying this because I know my wife listens to the show. I mean it sincerely, but I just want her to know. I'm going to try to stop letting my blue folder get so thick. And what if you could come to my house right now, you would find this folder, and April throws things in it. It's this IRS notice about our nonprofit, or this thing from the bank, or whatever. The American Express bill gets thrown in my blue folder, and that thing gets 2 inches thick. And then she finally comes and she sets it on my desk at work, or puts it at my place setting at our table, and is like, all right, time's up. You got to go through this stupid blue folder. And sometimes I'll find stuff where it's like, oh, it's really funny? As I'm thinking about it, this is a true story. Do you know what's in my blue folder right this split second? What? A summons to be on jury duty that I had 5 days to respond to that I haven't responded to. So I may be actually recording our next podcast from jail. I may be recording our next podcast from the county lockup because Kent did not respond to his jury summons that is clearly in my folder.
Like, point made. You need to go through the blue, thinking about the blue folder more often.
So those are some keep, improve, start, and stop for me.
Yeah.
Lawson, land the plane for a dad who's thinking about his coming 12 months. What can he do next?
Yeah. So dads, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'll commit to. I throw this out. Join us as we go into 2025, talking about what is the vision that we want to have for our lives that aligns with the purpose that God has put onto your heart for your life and for the how you are as a dad in your family. I'm going to go back to Lynn from the CrossFit gym, where she said she was laying there. She was like, it's going to be 10 a.m. regardless. Will I be happy at 10 a.m. that I stayed in bed, or will I be happier that I went to the gym? And she goes, I rarely ever leave here going, yeah, I wish I had not done that. Almost every time she says, she's leaving going, okay, that was good. I'm glad I came. So to myself and to us dads, I say, in 60 days, what will I be glad I did? What in the Bible do I want to go deeper with and have a better understanding of? Or maybe I want to choose a path in the Bible for the year that I want to reinforce more often, right? Like it, but in your Bible study, think about what is it that you want to either understand better or reinforce with yourself just more often. Like it, but it needs to be reinforced more often. So in 60 days, what will I be glad that I did? Or what will I be glad I did not do? And then like for me, I'm thinking my birthday is in May. That's like, 6 months from now. That's a pretty decently out there kind of date. When that day comes, what will I be proud that I did on my 57th birthday when I look backwards and go, I committed to that and I wanted to stop that, or I wanted to start or improve this other thing. And by the time my birthday gets here, will I be saying, yes, I did. I'm glad I got out of bed. I'm glad I went to the gym. I feel better now that we're here. And I'm looking backwards, or even longer term, like I turned 60 in 2028. And so it reminded me, the kind of like you were saying, this guy that wants to be, in his 70s differently than he was in his 60s. Zig Ziglar said to screen these decisions that you can make throughout your day according to the goal that you have set for yourself. And you ask, will doing this take me closer to or farther from my goal? And so it's great to have these longer term things like you did for 100 miles. There were times in there where you made a decision that got you closer to that goal. And there were times where you were talking about in June, you still had 24 hours every day in your past, but you had chosen to skip that 1 hour on swimming, enough time. I should be at halfway there and I'm not there. And so you got to put some thought into what it is that you want to do. Write this stuff down, apply some dates, give yourself some reasonable timelines so that when you get there, are you going to be closer to or farther from whatever the objective is, or whatever the keep is, or the improve, or the start, or the stop? Like what kinds of things are you going to use to help you make better decisions throughout the day? Because it comes down to every day, sometimes every hour, what are you going to focus on to enable yourself to be where you want to be for yourself and for your family whenever that day comes?
Well, and I'll tell you, man, one of the things that really kept me going this past year on my swim goal, just use that one as an example, was that I had shared it with my wife. And for me, it's not just that I shared it with anybody, some rando person, walking through the mall. It's that I shared it with somebody who I really didn't want to disappoint. No joke, right? For real. Like I know my psychology. As I get into my mid 50s, I've learned something about me. There are certain people in my life I can make a promise to, and frankly, like a swim goal or something like that. And I don't care if I disappoint that person as much as if I disappoint my wife. And so for me, that's an amazing psychological buttress for me.
Right.
If I'm going to have a certain goal, I love to let my wife, April, know about it, because I might disappoint you, Lawson. I may disappoint my kids. Certainly I'll disappoint some random stranger, but I don't want to disappoint my wife. And so I wouldn't give her 50 goals because I'd crush myself, but I might give her one or two just so that I go, man, I got to be at 100 by the end of December so I can sit down and enjoy that New Year's Eve party with my wife and know that, there's something about the psychology that for me is super healthy. I want to encourage a dad with what we got from a customer on our website. His name is Adam. And Adam said that he has a goal, which you talked about a minute ago, Lawson, to spend more one-on-one time with each of his 3 children. He used the word, he says, quote, I want to be more intentional about our experiences together. So Adam, thank you for shopping at Manhood Journey. I think he snagged our Embarking one-on-one Bible study guide. Thank you so much, Adam, for doing that and for emailing us and letting us know what one of your targets is as a dad. We hope today's show has helped you, Dad, think about what some of those things might be for you this coming 12 months. And again, whether you're listening in January, it's a calendar year, or in the middle of the year, the next 12 months, what do you want to keep? What do you want to improve? What do you want to start? And what do you want to stop? We hope today's show has encouraged you along those lines. Thank you, Lawson. And we will talk to you with a Power Pack show next week. Hey, Dad, thank you for listening to today's show. If you found this episode helpful, remember, you can get all the content and show notes at manhoodjourney.org/podcast. And if you really liked it, please consider doing 3 things. Number 1, share this podcast with someone. You can hit the share button in your app, wherever you listen to podcasts, or just call the person up and tell them to listen in.
We're sorry, your call cannot be completed as dialed.
Number 2, subscribe to this podcast so you get episodes automatically. That helps us as well to help dads find the show. You can do that through your favorite listening app, whatever that is. And finally, review this podcast. Leave us a review, good or bad, wherever you listen. Those reviews also help other dads find the show. You can always learn more about what we're up to at manhoodjourney.org or fatheronpurpose.org. We will see you next week.